Everything points somewhere. You're going to hear us use the word orientation a lot around here, and I want to explain that up front because I don't want it to feel like jargon or branding or some religious code word. It's not that. It's something I kept noticing long before I ever had language for it. I kept seeing the same pattern in people, in myself, in relationships, in work, in faith, even in people who said they didn't believe in anything. Everything kept pointing somewhere. Life didn't just unfold randomly. They bend, slowly, quietly, and most of the time, nobody noticed until they were already far away from where they thought they were headed. So when we say orientation, we're not introducing a new idea. We're naming something that's already happening. Orientation is direction. It's what a life is pointed toward over time. Not what we say we want, not what we believe on paper, but what our actual decisions, habits, explanations, and tolerances are aligned toward day after day. Every system has an orientation. People do too. Even saying, I don't know what I believe is still a direction. Even saying, I'm just taking life as it comes is still a trajectory. There's no neutral gear. There's no pause button where time stops moving and nothing accumulates. What we've noticed is that once something becomes the reference point, everything else starts organizing around it. How we explain our mornings, how we justify staying or leaving, what we're willing to put up with, what we avoid correcting because it feels inconvenient. Orientation doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself over time. The metaphor that really made this click for me is flying. If a plane leaves the runway just half a degree off its intended course, nothing feels wrong at first. The engines are fine, the ride is smooth, the sky looks the same out the window. 10 minutes in, you're barely off. An hour in, you're noticeably wrong. A few hours in, you're not just a little off course. You're headed somewhere else entirely. And the important part is this: nothing dramatic ever happened. There was no crash, no warning light, no moment where someone stood up and said, hey, something's wrong. The system worked the whole time. It just worked in the wrong direction. That's what makes this metaphor so uncomfortable, because that's how real life drift works. People don't usually ruin things with one big decision. They stay slightly misaligned for a long time and let time do the damage for them. And here's the part that really matters. Early correction feels unnecessary. When you're only half a degree off, correcting feels silly. Everything still works. Nothing hurts enough yet. Momentum feels trustworthy. Comfort feels like confirmation that you're doing fine. Late correction feels overwhelming. Now the turn is big. Now it costs something. Now it disrupts other people. Now it forces conversations you don't want to have. So people wait. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't care, but because time distorts urgency. By the time the misalignment becomes obvious, the correction feels terrifying. And that's why so many people stay on trajectories they quietly know aren't right. It's not denial, it's delayed attention. Another image that helps is driving a car. If you let go of the wheel, the car does not stay perfectly straight. Not because the car is broken, because roads aren't flat, wind exists, gravity exists, tires aren't identical. Straightness has to be maintained. You're always making small corrections, even if you don't think about it. And if you stop paying attention, drift takes over automatically. That's not a moral failure, that's physics. And this is where a lot of people get tripped up. Orientation is not natural. Drift is natural, entropy is natural, comfort is natural, inattention is natural. Holding a heading takes effort, and effort has a bad reputation. We've been taught that if something is right, it should feel effortless. But that confuses coherence with ease. Effort doesn't mean something is wrong. Often it means something matters. This is also where people confuse intention with orientation. Those are not the same thing. Intention is what we say we want. Orientation is what our life is actually pointed toward. We can intend one thing and be oriented toward another for years without noticing, because intention feels sincere and orientation feels invisible. Someone can intend connection and still be oriented toward avoidance. Someone can intend meaning and still be oriented toward comfort. Someone can intend faith and still be oriented toward control. Orientation doesn't care what we claim. It responds to what we practice. And over time, the system always reveals what it's actually aimed at. This applies whether we're talking about faith or not. A faith-based orientation points toward God, toward Christ, toward coherence, toward something beyond the self. But a secular orientation still points somewhere: career, security, identity, approval, moralism, meaning. There's no neutral option. Everyone is oriented toward something. The difference isn't belief versus unbelief. The difference is examined orientation versus unexamined orientation. And here's something we've all seen but don't talk about enough. You can be deeply religious and badly misoriented, and you can be secular and still live by unspoken faith structures. Orientation shows up in what you trust to hold your life together when pressure hits. This is why orientation sits underneath everything else we talk about here. Anxiety is about where the future is pointed. Shame and guilt are about how the past pulls on the present. Faith is about what we trust to realign us. Healing is about correction, not erasure. If orientation is off, every solution becomes temporary. You can fix symptoms forever and still feel like something keeps slipping. If orientation is clear, small corrections start to matter again. That's why we're not going to stop talking about this word. Not because we don't have new ideas, but because everything else builds on this foundation. The truth is, you're already oriented. The question isn't whether, the question is toward what. And the good news is, this doesn't require dramatic turns. It doesn't require blowing up your life or reinventing yourself overnight. Small corrections made early matter more than big ones made late. Attention matters more than intensity. Direction matters more than speed. Time is always moving, whether we're paying attention or not. So the work isn't perfection. It's noticing, correcting, and staying awake to where we're headed. That's orientation.